Dead by Daylight is definitely having a time right now. The new killer, the Tokyo Ghoul, has hit DBD like an airborne virus at an unvaccinated preschool. It's all tears and screaming and throwing up all over the place, and I'm just glad it isn't me who has to clean it up this time. His popularity means killer queues are sky high, and a lot of survivors cannot stand playing against him, such Mr. Q is even worse. Finally, I'm not a contrarian. When I complain about something, everybody else does as well. Tons of killers, like Knight and Twins, are also bugged beyond their capacity to function. A lot of killer players are terrified that behaviour might do a Skull Merchant to Kaneki, and the Blood Moon event dropping right now with the promise of bountiful blood points eventually if people play enough. It's all just a bit hectic and nobody's too happy with behaviour right now. And for what it's worth, that includes me. My favourite killers are either bugged to hell or eat shits are made for this that everyone's running because of Kaneki. Killer queues in both modes, but especially core game, are longer than I'd like them to be, behaviour is late getting back to us with feedback about the Skull Merchant design preview, and Kaneki's not a killer I like playing or playing against either, so I can't even really enjoy the new content. Hell, I took Kaneki's release as a mini break from DBD. I finally got round to doing my Overwatch comp placements. I got back into Marvel Rivals for some reason. I've been painting Sisters of Battle in my downtime, and watching Columbo with the squad on Discord because I just don't really care to play DBD much right now. Which is why the tone of this video might seem a bit strange, because amidst all these problems, I see potential. Something really exciting I'm seeing DBD dangle in front of us that I hope they can take and run with, and that's the blood generators and pump mechanics. It's the only new mechanic in the Blood Moon event, and it gives survivors a new way to complete generators. They extract blood from the pumps and carry it across the map to a generator, which they can repair extremely quickly by pouring blood into a reservoir. If they run with a can, some of the blood in the can will spill out of it at a slow fixed speed that I'm calling the slosh rate in this video, and doing so will leave trails for the killer to follow. But if they walk, they can preserve the whole can at the cost of some speed. Just like everything else behaviour has ever made or done, this has caused some controversies and frustrations which we will get into later. But it all makes a lot more sense if you stop seeing the Blood Moon event as an event and start seeing it as an experiment. The Blood Moon is a shitty event. It does nothing for killer except remove 5 or 6 of your character options and most of your good perks. But it's a pretty cool showcase of a very exciting new mechanic that could change DBD forever. Welcome friends and foes, survivors and killers, to the Blood Moon, potentially paving the way for Dead by Daylight's future. For the past almost 9 years, Dead by Daylight's core gameplay loop has remained broadly the same for both sides. Survivors have to complete generators by holding M1 and passing skill checks, and if they do this enough, then the gates are powered, they open them up and escape. And the other side has to down, hook and sacrifice them before that can happen. That has been the Cavendish gravitational constant of DBD. These variables might change, how many gens there are, or how long they take, or even how many survivors or killers there are in the trial. But holding M1 on gens is just the way DBD has always done things. It's been a key benefit point and frustration factor for the survivor experience. It gives games a real ebb and flow in terms of pace. You can go from chilling on a gen and chatting with your mates to a high intensity chase and back again at a moment's notice. It means Survivor is easy to get into and come back to after a break, and it helps that the game's objective is extremely obvious. At any time you have the opportunity, you can always just hop on a generator if you don't know what else to do. This is a far cry from a lot of other ASIMs like Video Horror Society or Evil Dead, where the objective is often complicated, taking several stages or a level of coordination that requires you to be a lot more involved in the game than just holding M1 and passing skill checks. But that simplicity is also a huge pain point for a lot of invested Survivor players. Many of those players have been playing Survivor for thousands and thousands of hours, and have understandably gotten bored of holding M1 on gens for all that time. For players who play Survivor with friends, this is less of a problem. You can coordinate saves and complex macro movement and decisions that give the game more depth over time, or you can just kick back and relax with your friends, with the game becoming less of a game for you and more of a socialization opportunity because what you do becomes automatic. But for a solo queue Andy out there, the frustration is impossible to ignore, and wanting gens forever until the Anon mode Sable on your team runs the blight into you because she's too busy following her Windows auras around like a lost puppy to actually think about where the gens are being done. The only thing that's tried to shake up that gameplay loop in almost 9 years of DBD is new perks and new killers. Man, it would sure be nice if we continuously got innovative new killer designs that force survivors to play in different ways, rather than reheating the same archetype and serving it back up to you over and over again, in the hopes it'll feel different than the last 5 times you've sampled it. Hope you guys are all enjoying Kaneki, by the way. But this has diminishing returns. By piling complexity into killer powers to make the survivor experience feel fresh every time, all you're doing is increasing the informational load on the average survivor player. It's not different, it's just more. Especially since killer players tend to crystallise around a few killers that get played more than any others anyway, so the experience with these killers will homogenise, and you don't get to play against anything else enough to learn the counterplay and potentially improve your experience. There's no better example of this than twins really. They're all so underplayed that no one knows how to play against them properly, so their kill rates are inflated by the fact that people just don't see them enough. Now, for dedicated long-term survivors to get a truly fresh experience, survivor gameplay has to get shaken up. And here, at the end of this long-ass tangent, are blood generators. Blood gens are that shake-up we need, and let me tell you, they're a fantastic change for Survivor side in this Blood Moon event. When you're working on a blood gen, you have to find a pump with plenty of blood in it, drain half of that blood into a can, and then it'll show you the aura of the nearest blood gen. You can run to it and lose some of your blood to the slosh rate, or walk over to conserve it. So moving around the map becomes core to progressing the game and encourages you to look around a bit near a critical blood gen in case you can find a closer pump. There's still 3 normal gens on the map, so if you want the downtime of just chilling on a generator or want to play safe when you're dead and hook or something, you can do that. But the event highly encourages you to travel around the map, interacting with new objectives. It's also way harder to hold a blood gen as part of a 3 gen, since progress is applied much faster once a survivor brings a can over and starts work. I don't know many people who've played Survivor during this event who dislike the blood gen mechanic. There's a reason killer queues in this event mode are much shorter than they are in the base game mode. Okay, there's 2 reasons. Yes, Survivor is a lot more fun in the Blood Moon because the replacement of 4 of your 7 gens with fun little relay races is something that's cool and genuinely unique and refreshing. But killer queues are also shorter because there's kind of no reason to play it in this mode. At least not on the surface level. There's no new unique mechanics that killers get to play with. It really is just standard DBD. Except, perks and powers that relate to generators don't work on blood gens. When Kaneki dropped, DBD had the problem of one extremely powerful killer being overwhelmingly popular and irritating survivors with a repetitive gameplay loop. So Behaviour addressed this by soft disabling a bunch of other killers and removing slowdown so that killers weaker than Kaneki are fighting in the trenches to control the gens. It's honestly quite funny that it's all fallen into place this way. Almost as funny as being the 2nd time in a row that Handmaster's power has just completely broken during an event. While people started playing this event, a lot of players assumed it was bugged. After all, this pact is already comically non-functional, with crippling bugs to twins, knight and other killers. But no, according to Death Dorks, it's entirely intentional. Straight up, in terms of perks, I do get it. It would be super hard to make blood gens feel balanced with slowdowns being able to affect them, and it's safer to let slowdowns not affect them and give killers a harder time than it is to potentially have slowdowns affect them and maybe, if they turn out to be overtuned, risk holding Survivor games hostage completely. The 2 perks that strike me as problematic would be Ruin and Dead Man's Switch, because getting off the blood gens to refuel the cans is core to the way they progress, and Ruin and DMS both highly punish survivors for getting off gens. If you pour blood into a gen and then fuck off to get more blood to fill it up again, Ruin will have eaten half or more of the progress you earned by the time you get your blood, fill it up and come back again. DMS is in a similar boat. The gen will spend more time blocked than it will be progressible because it will block as soon as you get off the gen and run out of blood. So it makes sense why Behaviour played it safe and decided not to let slowdowns work at all on these generators. But you know what doesn't make any sense? Powers having those same restrictions. There are 6 killers whose powers get directly fucked by the Blood Moon event, some more seriously than others. Freddy and Houndmaster have powers that can target generators but not blood gens, limiting the use of search mode and dream projection. Plague cannot infect blood gens or blood pumps to contaminate survivors. Knight cannot send a guard to break a blood gen. Doctor cannot prevent a survivor in Madness 3 from doing a blood gen. And blood gens being completed will not activate the timers of reverse bear traps. Some of these killers can work around it. It's not the complete end of the world for Knight or Plague, but for Freddy and especially Pig, it's an absolute beating to killers who are already on the weaker end and can't use slowdowns to make up for a less efficient power. The blood gens have the 3 gen mechanic built on, so clearly they are gens on some level. Not letting powers work on them was a conscious choice, but it was a very short-sighted one. Effectively soft banning these killers from the event alongside the people who would play them. And it's not like these interactions would be problematic either. I don't see the risk in letting Freddy teleport to one or Knight sending a guard to break one. And if behaviour is really that risk averse, they probably should have changed Sadako and Singularity for this mode, because the blood cans being limited items makes these two killers completely obnoxious. You can't hold a Sadako tape or a Singularity EMP at the same time as a blood can, and these items disappear once you put them down. Meaning if you take an EMP, turn off Singularity's power, you can't progress blood gens until you've used it. Or if you're holding a blood can full of juice, you can't then take a tape from Sadako's TV, stop her teleporting to that gen until you fully drain the can. If you're playing Singularity or Sadako during the event, you're practically playing on easy mode, because the limited item oversight on behaviour's end, which is odd considering that playing every other killer, and especially the 6 negatively affected killers, is more or less playing on hard mode. All of this, by the way, is completely ignoring the balance and speed of the blood gens themselves. At a baseline level, blood gens just kind of fly really, really fucking fast. Maybe it's because survivors are keen to do them because of the new event hotness. Maybe it's because slowdowns don't affect them. Maybe it's because the numbers on them are just screwed up, but they absolutely fly unless the killer is able to apply massive immediate pressure to force survivors off the blood pumps or keep them running so the blood sloshes out of the cans. It's a real nightmare for killers to keep a handle on, and if the mechanic has any future in DBD at all, then this is something that we would need to see addressed. Because let me be clear here, a lot of survivors adore this mechanic, and I've seen a lot of people who want or expect the blood gen mechanic to make it into the base game in some capacity. And if done well, I could see it being a huge benefit to Dead by Daylight. I would love to live in a world where the blood gen mechanic could give a new dimension to Dead by Daylight's gameplay. It would be the single biggest change to DBD's core framework ever. And now that the game is broadly decently balanced, it's never been a better time for behaviour to experiment with something crazy. Overwatch's perk system has shown us how core game overhauls to a game that's mostly well balanced can bring life back to a stagnating play experience, and it would be a great thing for behaviour to recapture that lightning in a bottle with the blood gens. But the mechanic needs a lot of iteration to get us to that point. I'll go into what that could look like later, but I can hear a lot of killer players already tapping away on their keyboards and their 15-minute Kaneki queues, asking me, why bother with any of this? I already said that there's no benefit for the killer to participate in the event mode, so why am I suggesting that the base game basically becomes the event mode? Well, is anyone else here old and grey enough to remember behaviour talking about an early game collapse? Blood gens being part of regular games would shift the balance of power away from survivors in the very early game, because suddenly they can't just spawn in and immediately start working on a generator. They have to find the gen, then explore the map until they can find its associated pump, and only when they have both can they start work on the first gen. That forces serves to move around in the early game, maximising the chances of the killer finding someone before much gen progress can be locked in, and potentially allowing for an early killer snowball if multiple survivors are caught with cans, and forced into early chases with their fresh blood sloshing everywhere. Not to mention, with properly balanced blood gen speeds and pump as a part of the game, it adds a lot of strategic depth and potentially powerful interactions to a lot of killers. And those killers aren't the normal suspects either. A lot of the killers you might not expect get new options presented to them by these new types of gens. Dash killers with high map control like Blight or Kaneki don't really care either way. They could easily pressure regular gens at a moment's notice wherever they are. So survivor positioning as they move from gen to pump doesn't matter. They'd be able to pressure those survivors anyway. But when survivors are moving repeatedly over short distances following predictable paths between pumps and gens, trap killers suddenly have a new toy to play with. Hag and Trapper players see a patch of grass on the route between a blood gen and a pump, and their brain starts doing backflips, their heart pumping out of their chest like Jim Carrey in The Mask. When his power is allowed to kick gens again, Knight benefits a lot, especially with Knight's contract, since a guard hunt forces survivors to run away or get hit, forcing their can to slosh blood everywhere and cost them vital progression as they run from the guard and back towards the gen. If play gets to contaminate blood gens, pumps and cans on the ground, they present whole new ways to infect survivors. Side objective killers love them too. Even disregarding the limited item system that makes the Shifty Twins so broken in the event mode, Pinhead, Pig, Xenomorph, Freddy, the RE killers, and yes, even Tweedledee and Tweedledum, force survivors to move around the map to counter the power. something you can't easily do while carrying a blood can that will overall gimp your progression potential. Twins are a secret winner too. Most survivors will run around like a headless chicken when Victor attaches to them to try and hold them hostage, but if they're carrying a blood can, doing that will deplete their reserves as they run, forcing them to either stay where they are so Charlotte can jump them while oblivious, ditch Victor quickly so the killer can redeploy him, or just drain their blood reserves heavily as they reposition, unable to top back up until Victor is recalled. Even Ghostface might be more fun. You can stalk somebody as they run off a generator to go and collect blood, and then lie in wait for them at the blood gen while they're 99 and have no idea how vulnerable they really are. If the blood generator mechanic can be twisted, tweaked, and finagled into a balanced part of the base game that doesn't unfairly warp the killer experience, it offers a ton more depth to both sides, not just Survivor. So what changes could behaviour make to get us there? First of all, make powers work on blood gens and sort out the horseplay with Sadako and Singularity. It's obviously absurd. But the showdown situation is a bit more complicated. I'm sure the gen kick and progression speed adjustments would be fine, but maybe Ruin and DMS and a few others could get adjusted. Get special effects for blood gens to replace the normal effect on regular gens. Maybe DMS blocks blood pumps once you get off them. Maybe Ruin affects the draining or filling rate of the pumps. I don't know, it's a case-by-case basis. The limited item thing is a bit of a sticky wicket to get around. You could just make a third item type just for blood cans, but perhaps the play here is to make them regular items you can pick up at the pump and return to it when they're empty. If they're regular items, it could be a valuable addition to the blood webs for Survivor. You could get the basic can at any pump. If you choose to bring in your own can, you can sacrifice an item slot for a special one that has increased carry capacity for blood, or maybe it fills up faster, or the slosh rate gets lower. You can have add-ons that affect this can, turn it into a toolbox for blood gens if you want. Servers haven't gotten a new basic item before, and a new base game mechanic seems like an ideal place to put it. But beyond the unfairness of power and perk interactions on blood gens, the big concern I'm seeing about them right now is the speed at which they get done, and there's a ton of ways you could address that. Right now it takes about 2.5 full blood cans to fill a generator, meaning it generally takes 3 trips to a blood pump for one survivor to solo complete a blood gen. Because the slosh rate is fairly low, survivors can run both ways and still have enough blood left to pop the gen in 3 trips, if they take a direct path to the nearest pump to the nearest gen. So most of the time, the slosh rate doesn't really impact whether or not you can pop the gen. There are a few potential solutions to this. You could make the gens require a bit more blood, you could increase the slosh rate so running is more punishing, you could make the pumps drain faster or recharge slower, stop survivors depending so heavily on the closest pump, and force them to travel further to top up their blood supplies. But I have a theory about blood gens I really wish I could put to the test. The fewer blood gens and pumps there are in the trial, the slower it will take for any blood gen to get completed. This might sound strange, but go with me on this journey. Let's imagine a trial where every gen is a blood gen. There are 7 gens and 7 pumps to go with them. Whenever you need to pop a blood gen, wherever you are, you're probably going to be near a pump to make filling up easier. Likely several pumps, so that if one pump runs dry and needs to recharge, there'll be another one nearby you can use in the meantime. Lots of pumps clustered everywhere means that blood gens will fly much like they do on the new event. Meanwhile, let's say there's only 1 gen and only 1 pump. If you want to complete that gen, there's only 1 place you can go to do it, and the killer can protect it more consistently. And only having 1 pump increases the ability for it to spawn further from the gen, so that means travelling across the map with a can becomes harder because you'll have to walk for longer or lose more to the slosh rate. Not to mention, it's much harder to stack out blood and have multiple survivors carrying full cans when the number of pumps is lower. With that in mind, maybe the best slowdown for blood gens is just having 1 or 2 fewer of them in a match and spreading out the pumps accordingly. There's so many ways blood gens could be rebalanced to make them feel fairer, to make the system fit into DBD's regular play pattern. But here comes the biggest problem with the mechanic. A big part of reaching good game balance is iteration, trial and error with extra steps, and if the blood gens are limited to the annual Blood Moon events, that trial and error to get them to the stage where they're ready for the main game, it'll take bloody ages to get there, no pun intended. The Blood Moon is a seasonal event, 3 weeks a year to get this mechanic ship shape and ready for the main game. By the time it's been ready, we'll have lost the rights to Stranger Things again. Oni will be in the retirement home, and Undone will be on its 7th rework and still not worth the perk slot. If there is enough demand by players to see blood gens added to the main game, there needs to be changes made to them, and tests of those changes need to be made somewhat frequently to iterate on the idea. And to that end, let me suggest something that I imaginatively called the Chamber of Blood. Consider the following. Whenever no other event modes are active, the Chamber of Blood is open, and we get a tweaked version of the event mode, with whatever adjustments the team might want to try out so that blood gens can fit better into the game. We could test regression perks' effects on blood gens in one of these. We could test killer power interactions. We could test variables like the number adjustments or distributions or spread between pumps and gens to get these things in the best state, and we can gauge interest to see if there's even something the community wants. I asked Twitter and the response was a bit mixed, with about 2/3 majority in favour of blood gens coming to the core game. But my community is a very small sliver of the DBD player base, likely skewed towards veteran players, so who really knows? Regardless of whether or not the mechanic itself is quite the right fit for the core game, blood generators represent a shake-up to the core of Survivor gameplay that on some level resonates with Survivor players. Maybe Behaviour will go forward with a more involved testing period for blood gens on the path to incorporate them into the full game, maybe they won't. But whatever they choose to do, I hope they remember the people who did like this mechanic and bring it back for future events with some rebalancing. And I hope they also consider the electrifying effect of revitalising the core Survivor gameplay. Simplicity has its draws, but we've seen shake-up to a core gameplay element work wonders on a stagnant player base. Again, just look at what the Overwatch perk system did to that game. Everybody went from pining over it and comparing it to Marvel Rivals to trying it out again, and in many cases falling back in love with the game. I'm hoping that DBD has a similarly bright future, and that Behaviour is ready to take some more risk with bold new gameplay shake-ups. So if you want to see blood gens more, let Behaviour know. Mention it on their posts about the Blood Moon event. Talk about it on the forums. They might ship a survey when the event ends, so talk about it then. We have a great chance of seeing this mechanic become a well-loved core part of DBD. Maybe it's worth the effort to see the landscape of Dead by Daylight change for the better forever. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short little video about the blood gen mechanic. Sorry that this took long for a video that probably isn't very impressive, but all I can say is I've got a shit ton of stuff that's all like halfway done, and I'm kind of waiting for the mid-chapter. I've got a big video in the pipeline about the direction that DBD's lore has been taking, but I wanted to wait till the mid-chapter Survivor comes before I talk about it. There's also the video on the mid-chapter Survivor herself who will be coming soon. There's the upcoming Merchant Design Preview 2 that definitely will require my attention, but I'm just sort of waiting for all these things to happen, so I thought this would be a fun topic to talk about in the meantime. Let me know what you think. Do you want to see blood gens in the main game, or would you rather just stick to regular M1ing and skill checks, you know? Well, that's all I've really got to say. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you next week in time for the new Survivor, so see you then. Cheerio.